Jason Cohen, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We'd love to know if you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and our listeners.
I am super grateful as we have a new little one at home, and he is healthy, and he's cute, and he smiles a bunch, and things are great. Super happy about like I said, a healthy baby, and life's good. It's a new adventure for us.
It's always a new adventure. Is this number 2?
Numero uno.
Numero uno. Okay, so that really changes things. I was going to say number 2 changes things, but number 1 really changes things. Yeah.
Yeah, we're learning that. And learning that nothing is sacred and nothing is the same ever again.
No, but things bounce back. Things definitely bounce back, and you get into a rhythm for sure.
Yeah, well, we're finally getting into the sleeping phase. You know, he's 5 months, so it's like fantastic. So
I know. Well, one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine, of course, is sleep, and it's like, well, have you ever had a newborn?
It's so true. It's so true. But well, you guys have been through it more than once, so you understand much better than me.
Yeah, and we constantly go through change through different phases of life, and having that newborn, you're lucky you're already sleeping at 5 months, because ours was not sleeping even after a year, at least one of them, and it was a rough go. But change has been something that you've been going through for a while now, and why don't you get us started talking about where you were and what changes you've gone through in your life?
Well, I'll try and give you the quick version, but previously I was 300 plus pounds. I had spent most of my after middle school life slightly overweight, and then eventually pretty obese. And around the time I was in my middle 20s or so, late 20s, I found myself looking down at the scale. I hadn't weighed myself in forever. Saw 297 on the scale and basically resolved that I wasn't going to allow myself to get above 300. And around the same time, a buddy of mine gave me a bicycle as a gift. And around the same time, I had another friend who died way too early. And it was just kind of this perfect storm of events that I never could have expected. I was not a yo-yo dieter. I never tried to lose weight. I just kind of had accepted that it was my destiny. And I'm from Louisiana. It's a phenomenal place to live. It's not a great place for health outcomes as a general population. And I just looked around me and I said, this is where I'm headed, and it's where everybody's headed. And at around 27, my world kind of got thrown into a whirlwind. And then here I am today. I'm 120 plus pounds lighter, and I no longer live on the couch with a computer and a TV dinner, and life is good.
What does it feel like when you look at yourself now as compared to before, like physically looking at yourself in the mirror? What do you see, and what do you go through emotionally when you do that?
There's some level of it. Probably there's a little bit of, part of it is still hard to believe. It's been a long time since I've been pretty overweight. So sometimes when I look at old pictures, it's, I don't know. It seems like such a lifetime ago. It's hard sometimes, because part of what my hope and goal and mission is to help people, help the Jasons, be the person that I wish I would have met, however many years ago. But at the same time, it is hard sometimes to put myself back in those shoes, because I remember, it's almost like when somebody tells you what you did as a kid and they say, "Don't you remember?" And I'm like, well, I kind of remember, but at the same time, like, the idea of being tired all the time and constantly being sick and, just those types of things is such a foreign idea to me, that, it's almost like 2 lifetimes. It's like as if, somebody, goes clean or sober or something like that. And then they have their before life and they have their afterlife. And I'm fully engaged in my afterlife now.
So if it's June 2019 now, how long ago did you start this journey?
It was 2011. That's whenever it was around April, March 2011 is whenever I was given the bicycle. Similar time frame when my buddy died. I had another friend who had a bunch of health issues. He'd had surgeries on kind of every major area in his body, and I saw him as like just slightly older than me. And I remember he had to have a surgery, and he was in the hospital on Thanksgiving. And I remember we went to go deliver like food to him for Thanksgiving, and he was the only person in his hospital room. And I just thought to myself, like, it is Thanksgiving. Like, this is not where you should be. And I just thought to myself, like, I'm not interested in this, you know. And I love my buddy, I still do, but I just, you know, the life wasn't for me. And it was, like I said, it was really a perfect storm of things that happened around that same time.
Was there anything that contributed to the weight gain, or was it just a matter of living in Louisiana and doing things the way everybody else does?
Yeah, you know, my wife and I, probably both to our benefit and our detriment, are kind of workaholics in terms of, like, we just don't know how to shut things off. And it works really well for getting things done. But at the same time, you know, when we were in college, we both worked. When we were in high school, we both worked. And you get into college, you know, you have the ability to choose every single meal. You also don't have a ton of money. So, you know, your cheap food is easy to find. And it was slow. It was a slow process. And I think I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I recognized that the process of gaining weight was really slow. And so when I finally decided, really kind of for the first time, to try and lose weight, I also just recognized that process would probably be slow, because I knew if it had taken me, you know, 10 years, 20 years to put on all this excess weight, then the idea of it coming off in a month or 2 or 6 months or even a year was kind of, you know, not realistic. So it was just slow things. You know, it was a lot of late night eating. I didn't like vegetables. I mean, everything that's on my plate these days, they're all things I wouldn't have eaten before.
I think that's a huge point that you just made that people need to listen to, because when we look online, we do see people who say, it took me 8 months to lose 100 pounds. Or, you know, I started losing weight within the first 5 days or the first 2 weeks. And that's not the way it works for everybody. And people get really down on themselves, or they lose interest very quickly. And it's really important to recognize, do things for health and let things come as they do, because not everybody has the same history. Not everybody has the same family history. Not everybody you know, has the same upbringing. Not everybody has been overweight for as long as everybody else. So it really does take time. And have you seen people who have jumped around from maybe, you know, trying it the McDougall way and trying it the, you know, somebody else's way, and not being able to make progress because they haven't given their body long enough to begin to heal?
Yeah, I think it's probably human nature to want results faster than it's realistic. You know, whether it's monetarily, physically, athletically. You see somebody around you who's accomplished a lot, and then you naturally think, well, you know, you haven't seen their journey. And I just, yeah, I have seen it a bunch. And I think part of it too was I kind of, in that time frame, in that moment, I fully owned the fact that I was responsible for my weight gain. That I had done it to myself. I had eaten all the ice cream sandwiches and shakes and all the French fries and everything. And I also said, you know, like, I've been in the driver's seat. I'm still in the driver's seat. We're just changing directions. And so for me, I had some openness to trying different things, which is kind of actually how I eventually ended up to plant-based, not at all planned. But I just said, you know, this is where I'm headed. Whatever's going to kind of get me there, I'm going there.
So you were approaching 300 pounds, and all these things impacted you in whatever way they did to go in a different direction. How did you decide what to do at that point? You said, I'm almost 300 pounds. I'm not living with this anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. I need to do this. And how did you find that?
You know, whenever you're overweight and there are some aspects that, you know, like I know from talking to other people, and there's some aspects that I know from just like standing in those shoes, so to speak. You know, when I was overweight, every time you pass up a mirror, you know, you avoided the scale. I was uncomfortable with the person that I was. I was uncomfortable with my body. And so when I decided to do something about it, I was willing to do whatever to get away from that, to not, you know, when I looked down at the scale, I had a rotary style scale and it only went to 300 pounds. So I'm looking at it and it's like it's not going any higher. You know, like, I mean, it was like literally a little dial that went around, and it was like almost like it went around in slow motion. And I was like, is the spring going to pop out of it? You know, like, what's going to happen? And so I said, I have to develop myself a sense of openness to trying new things, because obviously whatever I've been doing so far is not working, for me. And so, funny enough, I did a weight loss competition with a buddy for a 6-month period of time. And I just said, I'm going to find the most competitive person I know, and I'll do a weight loss competition. And ironically enough, the prize was dinner for 4 at some really nice restaurant. And he had a really expensive taste in wine, and I knew that it was going to be a crazy expensive dinner if I lost. So, you know, I did that, and during that time, I'm a pretty outgoing person, and so I would be in the grocery store, and I'd see somebody looking at a box of something that looked healthy, or a piece of fruit or whatever, and I'd talk to them, and I'd tell them about this weight loss challenge. You know, it's those things that I kind of did out of just what came to me. And now later, you know, you hear people talk about like, oh, if you're doing something, like, tell other people about it, because they'll keep you accountable. I was doing that not knowing. And I would talk to people about everything. I mean, people were telling me to get a trampoline and bounce up and down, and I would try anything for a month. I mean, it really was like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And eventually what that led to was I started eating foods that I never ate before. And those ended up becoming fruits and vegetables. And I didn't know at the time, but I was eating, you know, calorically less dense foods, and I was starting to lose weight. And, you know, of course you go to the kind of the less processed foods, less ice cream, less cookies and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I ate meat for a long time, and then eventually I just decided I was going to try vegetarian. And so I still did cheese, and I did a little bit of sushi. And, you know, it was always, I really just kind of stuck to trying to develop a sense of openness to what I was going to eat or not eat. And, you know, I've heard it said that, you know, the only taste that we don't develop over our lifetime is our mother's breast milk. And I kind of just took that idea and said, well, I've always said I don't like that, and just tried to say, well, maybe I'll be open to liking that. And I mean, there are some things that I just started eating tofu like 3 months ago. I've been doing this for a long time. And, you know, like, there's still some things that are like no-goes for me to this day. It's a very small list, but, you know.
What's the list? Brussels sprouts?
So this is the point at which people are going to turn this off. I don't eat beans.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How do you get your protein?
I know.
Yeah, people are freaking out right now.
Yeah. You know, I can do so. In the last year or so, I've developed an openness to lentils. So I can do lentils. I can do edamame soybeans. I can do chickpeas, but anything that's like a dark bean, I just still can't do, like black beans, red beans. You know, if I had to go and live in a Central American country for the rest of my life, I'd be eating corn tortillas and rice.
Is it the texture of the beans that gets you?
It's a little bit of texture, and I had an experience a couple times as a kid where, like, I had a not so great reaction to beans pretty quick in a row. So when I go to a restaurant now, I tell people I'm deathly allergic to beans.
So we have a friend who's been on the show, Brad Henning, who does NLP, and I'm sure if you wanted to get in touch with him, that over Skype, he could eliminate that experience for you. And
so if these black beans, if the black beans were blended up into like a spread, would you
a brownie?
A brownie,
like a brownie,
like some way that you wouldn't.
Thing.
Or like hummus?
No, even still?
No, I can't do it. It's so weird. I mean, it's, you know, but it goes to show you how ingrained these things are and how you develop these things from such an early age. And the idea that one day you're going to wake up and it's just going to be different is kind of unrealistic. You know, I do eat Brussels sprouts. There are a bunch of things that, like, again, I would have thought that, you know, I would have never have eaten. And there are some things that I really love that my wife is extremely open to. Food in general, but, like, you know, she'll eat Brussels sprouts. She's not as big of a fan, you know, there are a couple things like that. And I've been able to navigate it pretty easy. It's funny though. Sometimes you go to a plant-based potluck and, like, everything has beans in it. And I'm like, well, I'll just sit over here with my muffins and eat.
Well, when you do decide that it's time to get back into beans or to start them for real, don't go all in too quickly, because you're going to feel a lot of stomach issue. And a lot of people get turned off very quickly when they overeat the beans too quickly. It's
like drinking a whole bottle of vodka on your first
go. The high fiber content doesn't really sit well with a lot of people at first, but over time, when you're ready, you'll get there. and you'll be able to enjoy those beans too.
So did you need to do any of that deep, dark work on yourself? Like, it sounds like you made a lot of decisions, that you made things very tangible for yourself. Like, if I don't win this, then I'm out $500 kind of thing. But like, did you do the journaling and the meditation, and did you start to love yourself more, and all of those things that sometimes come along with needing to lose weight?
Yeah, I think my experiences were probably a little different than some people. You know, number one, I think whenever you do the yo-yo dieting, you kind of go on an emotional roller coaster as well. So I think I kind of unintentionally not experienced that, which I think, you know, it's like that success failure that can build a lot of kind of self-doubt and things like that. And to be honest with you, I was a happy person. It's funny because sometimes when people have their before pictures, they have their, like, you know, they're drunk somewhere and they look miserable, or, you know, like, this is going to sound super weird, but oftentimes as a former bigger person, you're always looking for like the worst old picture of yourself, so that whenever you have the before, you have the most stark contrast. And I see people who have these pictures, I'm just like, oh, they looked miserable. And I was pretty happy. It's hard to find many pictures where I seem, you know, disappointed. The things that I had going on were more just, I was not, you know, I wouldn't take my shirt off at a pool. I didn't, you know, I didn't love the way that I looked, but I wasn't unhappy. I also don't have a good sense of like a rear view mirror. I'm kind of the mindset that like the only thing that exists is forward movement. And so, there are probably some things, and maybe I just need to go to therapy or something, but, you know, I don't know that my experience was the same as some people. I didn't have an extreme self-hatred for myself. I didn't have, you know, I wasn't like extremely ridiculed or picked on. And, you know, I was a high functioning overweight person too. So it wasn't, you know, I had a business, I had an amazingly beautiful wife, which I still have. And so, I didn't maybe have some of those demons that some people have. Also, I didn't, you know, I didn't have like addiction issues, things like that. So for me, I was just kind of like, I'm moving forward. I'm going to get through this. I don't know what I'll look like, and I don't know what I'll do with my body then, but it will be different. And I still think I'm a work in progress. You know, I mean, I'm not where I want to be. My six pack is still hiding. And so, you know, I'm still working every day at it.
I'd say 95% of us are still, yeah. Oh, so what part did fitness play before the 300 pounds in your life?
Getting up from the couch to the fridge. No, I mean, not really anything. I mean, I didn't, every once in a while, you know, we'd go for a walk if it was a nice day or something like that. My wife and I have been married for 13 or 14 years. We've been together for 18. So, it's been a while. But not really much at all, which was, you know, I'm best friends with a buddy who gave me the bicycle, and I jokingly say to him, and he hates to hear it, but like, I'm eternally grateful, but why would you give a 300-pound man a bike? Like, it's the last place you want to be seen, you know? And it was, if you guys know bikes, it was a fixed gear at that, and he refused to let me change it. So I thought I was going to die. And I looked like, you know, a pencil underneath me. So, there was nothing. So it was a discovery. And the bike taught me that I could use my legs to get myself across town, and that, you know, I could get myself to go 100 miles, and, you know, all those things in between. That it was a real kind of awakening and discovery for me. And then later into hiking and running. And, so the physical was kind of, there are a lot of parts of my life that were kind of unknown or unexposed. And the physical's a big part of that.
And we met a few years ago, actually running in, I don't know if you remember, at Health Fest in Marshall,
yeah.
Texas. And we were talking a bit, and it just, hearing your whole story and remembering that we were running together. I mean, you've become a runner, and now that's something that you do, and it's part of who you are. And I wonder if you ever look back and say, I can't believe I never did this before, or it took me so long to get started. And like, tell us about how much you love running and all the cool things you've been doing.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not huge on like times or data or anything like that. The running and the cycling for me, because they're really, you know, it's kind of a seasonal thing. Like right now I'm running a ton. Other parts of my life I've ridden a ton, but it's just a unique perspective to see the world. And I travel some for work. It's great. I get to experience a new town whenever I'm running, and I'll find the interesting neighborhoods, or I'll find I was traveling out of the country for work, and we would like run explore. I had a friend who's out there with me, and we would run from place to place, and we'd check out places, and we'd talk to people. We'd grab a cup of coffee, and then we'd run to the next place. And it's the same thing with a bike. One of my favorite things is to do like multi-day bike tours, where you leave your car behind, you get on your bike for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7+ days, and then you get back to your car, and all your belongings are on the bike, and you're responsible for getting to the next place. And so really for me, this whole experience of doing running, the running is a way to get to places that I otherwise wouldn't see on my own 2 feet or in a car. You're not going to get to the top of the mountain on your bike. At least I'm not going to. And so it's really just opened me up to experience, on a very local level, my neighborhood and my neighbors, and get to know people. And then, on the bicycle, obviously can cover a bit more. And, it's just maybe that's why I've not done some of the therapy, because really, the physical aspects of it, whether it's hiking alone or hiking with others in the woods, or running alone or riding with others, it's given me an opportunity to kind of process everything around me and shut everything else out. And that's been pretty huge.
Yeah, I'm going to be traveling overseas in a couple weeks, and that's always my favorite thing to do, is be able to just put on my running shoes and just go out the door and explore and experience new places and just run around checking things out. It's always so much fun to do that.
So I want to go backwards a little bit, and you mentioned that plant-based wasn't part of the plan, and that you had kind of said, okay, I'm going to try vegetarian. So how did you find plant-based?
Well, it's not something that I necessarily like harp on or talk about, or would even consider myself super informed about, but, I did not grow up a hunter. I grew up fishing a little bit. And at a certain point, I realized, like, if I was responsible for taking care of my own food, not only was I not capable from just what I was actually able to do with my own 2 hands, but I also just didn't feel comfortable with the idea of like taking something else's life. And I also didn't feel comfortable with somebody else doing that for me. And so I kind of was like, okay, maybe I should try this veg thing. Keep in mind the whole time my wife is the one who's doing all the cooking. And I would come home saying like, I'm a vegetarian. And she would say, well, how are you going to eat? I
Sounds
saw,
familiar.
yeah, ding, ding, ding. I saw Forks Over Knives. And I was already doing veg. I think I was just doing cheese, like many others, was a really hard thing for me to give up. And I was doing, like I said, I think sushi every once in a while, and a little bit of fish if friends would invite us over for dinner and they had caught something. And I said, you know what? I'll give it a try. I was also still probably had 40 or 50 pounds more than I have now. And I was always willing to give anything a try to lose an extra 5-10 pounds, just to move the mark a little further. And I tried it. And at that point I was riding a bit. I wasn't really running, but I started realizing that I was just feeling better, and I could push harder on the bike, and I could, I would go for a really long ride, or I would work out, and the next day I'd feel up waking better. I also had a pretty I had a pretty consistent history of significant like allergy issues, sinus infections, and all that kind of stuff. I would wake up every day blowing my nose and always stopped up, and just my skin cleared up. There was a bunch of stuff that kind of happened simultaneously. And I thought to myself, well, nothing else has changed except for what I'm putting in my body. That's got to be the kind of the cause. And then I started feeling really good. I started having a lot of energy. I started just having so much energy that it was like I wanted to go for a second ride during the day, or I wanted to do more. I wanted to stay up later. And it, Forks Over Knives, definitely, I had already been kind of toying with the idea, and Forks Over Knives kind of pushed me over the edge to just give it a try. And I had tried countless other things that I did not stick with, that did not, that maybe helped me lose a little bit of weight. But this was kind of like, whoa, like we just went into hyperspeed. So.
Yeah, it's unbelievable the impact that documentary has made on so many lives. And thank you for sharing your transformation story with us. It's really amazing to see you as a totally different person than you once were. And one of the things that you've been doing is sharing other people's transformation stories through Big Change, the film. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to really tell people what that's all about and how you got that started, because it's really cool that there's so many people that go through these transformations. They're all coming from different places and have different stories. And you've created a place where we can now learn about all these people. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's funny because I'm talking about the bike a whole bunch. It doesn't take up nearly as much of my time as it used to be, but, one of the things I would do a lot is I would ride the indoor trainer. So I put my bicycle on a stationary trainer and you're able to ride inside, and I would watch Netflix. And I had made my way through all of the kind of standard documentaries that you would expect, and they were all great for information. But for some reason, I thought to myself, maybe there's a little bit of a lack of, for lack of a better term, inspiration, a lack of people who had done it, telling their stories, not Hollywood Biggest Loser style. And I just thought to myself, and at the time I had lost, 100 plus pounds, and I didn't know many people who had lost 100 pounds. And so I thought, maybe I'll just find some people who lost 100 pounds. And I'm a photographer and videographer by trade. And so I thought, how can I give back to this community that's given so much to me? And I'll use my time, my tools, my talents, and my resources to kind of do that. And so I started looking around for stories, and a buddy of mine here in Lafayette had heard about Josh Lajani. And Josh has lost 200 pounds. He lives an hour and a half from me. There aren't many people down here who eat like we eat. And I said, I got to get in touch with this guy. And so I reached out to Josh. He avoided me for a little bit, probably thought I was a little crazy. At the time, he had done some podcasts, but nobody had really kind of told his story visually, and I just thought it was so compelling. And so I ended up spending a couple of days with Josh down on the bayou, and shared kind of a little preview of that, and that kind of got the ball rolling. People started saying, hey, I've got a story. And, kind of the concept was have a film that tells four people's stories, two women, two men that come from different parts of the country, different parts of life, and create a documentary. And then I realized, I'm still working on that now, which we can talk about, but I also realized there are so many people out there who have incredible stories that I don't have the time, the budget, the resources to get to them, but they still need to be told. And, it's funny now because when, I've done over 100 episodes with a total of over 13,000 pounds lost. So when I'm standing in front of someone and they say, I can't do it because X, I can say, I should connect you with my friend blank who's got a similar story, or you should listen to this story with my friend so-and-so. And it to me now is, every time I do an interview, I interviewed, you guys for kind of the evolution of the podcast recently, is that they all kind of serve as a way of proving to myself and proving to others, just kind of continuing to drive home that this is out here for anybody. Anybody can switch to this way of eating, this way of living, and it can make a significant impact on their life and their health. And it's been, this incredible journey. Now we have these four people who've lost a combined 775 pounds that are actually in the film. Josh Lajani, Tim Kaufman, Denise Norris, and Nalita Basson. And it's been incredible. I mean, every time I get off the interview with you guys, I'm invigorated. I want to go for a run or go for a walk, and it's an incredible opportunity and honor to be able to kind of get some of these people's stories across.
Yeah, and it's very cool that you're doing that. And we've had Josh and Tim both on the podcast before, and we'll put a link to those shows in our show notes. What was the most interesting transformation, other than those two, that you've come across so far in your interviewing?
It's so hard to say because, there have just been so many. One that oftentimes comes to mind is my buddy Justin Lacey. And Justin used to be 500 plus pounds. He lost, I think, right around 300 pounds. We've run in Leadville together. He ran a 50K where he jumped out of an airplane and ran. And he's just kind of a wild man. and we'll hop in his car to do something crazy at the drop of a hat. I mean, there's so many. I mean, honestly, the 4 that are in the film, I thought I really wanted to find a diverse group of people, and their stories are so incredible. And sometimes the ones that have like in the film, there's Josh, Tim, Denise, and Nalita. Well, Josh, Tim, and Denise have all lost over 200 pounds. Nalita's lost 120 or so. But, Nalita is the only person in her family with sight. And 2 out of her 3 kids, or all 3 of her kids are blind. 2 have special needs in addition to that. And, when people say, oh, I just don't have the time or I can't do it, you have a lady who is really, she is the eyes for the entire family. She is taking care of those kinds of things. And then her husband, who when we were there 2 years ago, since then has lost 100 pounds. He just ran the Boston Marathon a couple months ago as a blind runner, and he was previously 500 pounds. So, it's like it's not just the person, it's the entire family has been transformed. Same thing with Josh. You look at his entire family tree. I mean, it's like he changed the species of tree that they were. Same thing with Tim. And Denise, on the other hand, has completely done it on her own. She had 0 help. So it's hard to choose, but there's 100 or so to listen to.
And so, but all these people, do they have to want to make that change before it happened? Like, did they all have something or a reason to make a change before they started making that change? Because that's always the toughest thing. Like, people, oh, you're so overweight, you need to change. That's not going to make them make the change. So I would assume they were interested in making that transformation before it actually happened.
Yeah, I think it has to come from within, and I wouldn't, I see myself as more of a storyteller than a psychologist or a there's a whole element of that. Kind of the new thing I'm working on with Dr. Marbus and Anthony Masiello. They are much more on the mental side of things. Anthony's a health coach. Lori's had the experience working with patients, and for me, I'm an observer. But I think if, I've observed something that's exactly what you're saying. Like at the end of the day, you got to make a choice for yourself. I mean, I can't tell you how many of those tough conversations I've had with friends since, because I wish somebody would have had that conversation with me, saying like, hey, look, I care about you. I love you. You have kids. And how many of those times it's just met with rejection and awkwardness and whatnot. But when you're sitting there and you have to make a decision between a really delicious fried plate of food, or you're passing up all of the fast food joints, like, I'm not going to be in the passenger seat with that person. They've got to make the decision for themselves.
Yeah, it's amazing. The food that you put in your mouth has such a direct impact on everything that you do, and people don't always realize that connection until they can connect those dots, which is sometimes very difficult for people to do. I want to just shift a little bit. You recently had a child, and I wanted to know how that plant-based lifestyle has impacted the whole family, your wife, the child. Is everyone on board, and how is that going?
Everybody except for the dog's on board. It's been good. We had some questions at the onset of it because we just didn't know, and kind of like I said, Dr. Marvis has been a huge asset to that, and also just other friends who have kids. It's like, how do you handle these tough situations? We're 5 months in, but it's like, how are we going to handle the first birthday party where a cupcake's offered? And we're still trying to work through that. But yeah, we ended up doing soy formula, which the doctor that we have here locally kind of pushed back on. So we've kind of got a preview of what's to come. I also realize, like, I have a certain responsibility myself to kind of ingrain some of those healthy decisions into our child from a young age. We're going to have to do more prep work so that we don't just buy stuff that's pre-made at the store, but like, that's a choice and a sacrifice we'll have to make so that, he has the best chance of growing up as healthy as he possibly can, and instilling some of those things, of trying all those different things that I never tried or I refuse to try. So it's, you kind of, I think I'm learning as you get a kid, you get a little bit of a mirror that comes with it to glance into yourself as well. So yeah, it's been good so far.
So when the time comes, because I know he's only 5 months, will you be able to feed him beans?
Yeah, no. As long as my wife cooks them, and I'll have a clothespin on my nose.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I wish you a lot of luck with that. I know it's not going to be easy. There's always going to be challenges that are going to get in your way, but it can be done. It's done by a lot of people that we both know, and you definitely can find a lot of support when it comes to raising healthy plant-based families and kids, and it's something that we talk about quite often. Jason, you're doing such great work. Where can people find you online, learn more about The Big Change, the film, and the podcast or the videos that you're putting out there?
Yeah, so Big Change, the film, on all social media outlets is kind of where the documentary is. The podcast and YouTube series is moving to Healthy Human Revolution. And so that's kind of where it'll be. Those new stories will live. And that's under healthyhumanrevolution.com. We've also got some educational resources that Anthony and Lori have put together, and recipes and recipe videos and all that kind of stuff. And then myself personally, if you just want to connect with me, I'm at Jason_Cohen. But to be honest with you, I'm pretty terrible sometimes on purpose at social media. So you can always reach out to me through thebigchangethefilm.com. I also have another documentary that's coming out at heavyasled.com that's a little bit oddly focused on myself and a running adventure, and that's coming out soon. So any of those will kind of connect you with me. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but that's probably I check those messages once a year or so.
Well, that's all pretty cool stuff, and we really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today and all the work that you're doing and sharing all those incredible stories, because those stories need to be heard. Everyone is different, and it will impact other people in very different ways. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for the work you guys are doing as well, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in Marshall or somewhere else.
Sounds good. See you soon.
Cool.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.